So good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock in the UK, 9 o'clock here in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Our breaking news this morning, it's war. President Putin announces the start of a military operation. Explosions heard in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, as well as the eastern city of Kharkiv, minutes after President Putin made his announcement for the start of his military offensive.
I decided to conduct a special military operation. Its goal is the protection of the people who, for 8 years, suffered from abuse and genocide from the Kyiv regime.
Ukrainian tanks and soldiers have been taking up positions on the streets of the eastern city of Mariupol as the president declares martial law here.
Do not panic. We are strong. We are ready for everything, and we will defeat everyone, because we are Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.
Russia's assault began as the UN Security Council held an emergency session overnight.
This is the saddest moment in my tenure as Secretary General of the United Nations.
Boris Johnson will chair a Cobra meeting at 7:30 this morning to discuss the UK's response. Of course, we'll bring you the latest as we get it with our correspondents in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, as well as Kharkiv on the eastern border of Ukraine, the Russian capital too, Moscow, also from Brussels, from outside Downing Street, and from the United States. Good morning from the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Gunfire and explosions have been heard here and in the second city of Kharkiv shortly after the Russian President Vladimir Putin authorized a special military operation in Ukraine's Donbass region and told the Ukrainian military to lay down their weapons and go home. In a special televised address on Russian state TV, Mr. Putin said Russia had been left with no choice but to defend itself against what he said were threats from Ukraine. This is what we know so far. In Moscow, Vladimir Putin announced the military operation just before 3 a.m. UK time. At the same time, an emergency meeting of the Security Council was taking place in New York. As President Putin spoke before dawn, big explosions were heard on the outskirts of Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, and other cities across Ukraine. There are reports that Russian troops have landed in Mariupol and Odessa. They have not been confirmed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has declared martial law in Ukraine and told people to stay home. Well, since then, we've had a series of developments throughout the morning. Air raid sirens have been heard here in the capital, Kyiv, though we are told they are tests at the moment. In the Donetsk region, Russian-backed separatists say they have launched what they call massive strikes against Ukrainian forces. More recently, the Ukrainian military say their air defense system shot down 5 Russian planes and 1 Russian helicopter in the Luhansk region, though the Russians have denied that that has happened. And in the UK, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is expected to convene that Cobra committee meeting I was talking about at 7:30 this morning. Let's listen back to that special address on Russian television by Vladimir Putin in the early hours of this morning.
I decided to conduct a special military operation. Its goal is the protection of the people who, for 8 years, suffered from abuse and genocide from the Kyiv regime. We urge you to lay down arms immediately and go home. I will explain. All servicemen of the Ukrainian army who comply with this requirement can freely leave the area of military action and return to their families. Whoever would try to stop us and further create threats to our country, to our people, should know that Russia's response will be immediate and lead you to such consequences that you have never faced in your history. We are ready for any outcome.
Well, a few hours ago, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky declared martial law here, and he urged citizens not to panic as Russia launched their military strikes. Let's take a look at what he said in a video posted on his social media channels.
Dear Ukrainians, this morning President Putin announced a special military operation in the Donbass. Russia carried out strikes on our military infrastructure, on our border guards. Explosions were heard in many cities of Ukraine. We introduced martial law throughout the state. A minute ago, I had a conversation with President Biden. The US is starting to gather international support. Today, we need you, each of you, to be calm. If possible, stay at home, please. We are working. The army is working. The entire security and defense sector of Ukraine is working. I, the National Security and Defense Council, the government, will be in touch. Soon I will be in touch again. Do not panic. We are strong. We are ready for everything, and we will defeat everyone, because we are Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.
President Zelensky talking to the people of Ukraine there. Western leaders have been reacting to what has happened this morning. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, he tweeted this: "I am appalled by the horrific events in Ukraine, and I have spoken to President Zelensky to discuss the next steps." President Putin has chosen a path of bloodshed and destruction by launching this unprovoked attack on Ukraine. The UK and our allies will respond decisively. In the United States, US President Joe Biden said the prayers of the entire world are with the people of Ukraine as they suffer an unprovoked and unjustified attack by Russian military forces. Mr. Biden said President Putin has chosen a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of life and human suffering, and that the world will hold Russia accountable. The US President says he will be monitoring the situation from the White House and will continue to get regular updates from his national security team. He says he will meet with his G7 counterparts in the morning. In Europe, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says, "In these dark hours, our thoughts are with Ukraine and the innocent women, men and children as they face this unprovoked attack and fear for their lives." The Ukrainian Foreign Minister, Dmytro Kuleba, has urged the world to act immediately, warning that the future of Europe and the world was at stake. He's called for devastating sanctions, as he put it, on Russia now, and for Russia to be fully isolated. He also called for more weapons, equipment, financial and humanitarian assistance for Ukraine. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said Russia must stop this military action immediately. Today, he said, we will coordinate closely within the framework of the G7, NATO and the EU. Mr. Scholz added, "This is a terrible day for Ukraine and a dark day for Europe." So let's have a look at the map that shows the rebel-held areas of Donetsk and Luhansk. There we are. That's the center of all this, down in southeastern Ukraine's Donbass region. Earlier this week, Russia recognized the regions as independent from Ukraine and signed friendship treaties with both of them. Ukraine considers them, and the UN considers them, temporarily occupied territories, but Russia say they are theirs, and they annexed Crimea. And to the south of Donetsk is Mariupol, which lies outside of the rebel-held area. But this morning, reports of at least 2 blasts have been heard in that city. So clearly, a lot of action going on down there. Deborah Haynes is with me. And so, Deborah, I mean, we could see there the map of Donetsk and a lot of action clearly going on there. And this was the justification used by Putin. But just give us, as you know it, what is happening in this country.
Well, in terms of that justification, you heard President Putin talking about genocide, which is just completely false. He's created this false narrative to justify what he's done, saying that there's been like these attacks in the east and that the Ukrainian government poses that threat, which is just not true. And in terms of what...
Deborah, I do apologise. We're just going to lose a guest. It's a Ukrainian MP. I will come straight back to you. Lesia Vasilenko is a member of the Ukrainian Parliament in Kyiv, and she can speak to us now. And can you just give us, first of all, your reaction to what is happening to your country this morning?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to say that it's not separatist-held areas or whatever the terminology you were using. These are Ukrainian territories which are occupied today, not by separatists, but by Russian armies, irregular forces of the Russian military, and also regular Russian military, which has broken Ukrainian borders, which is bombing Ukrainian airports, and which is literally marching onto Kyiv and other cities. So this must be very clear. We're not talking about any kind of civil war or any hints at civil war. Literally, Ukraine is at war, a war which was declared by Russia at 5 a.m. this morning, Kyiv time officially, and 3 a.m. UK time, but also a war which has started several hours before that, when the first shellings of eastern parts of Ukraine have started. So I urge you all, please, the media, the international community, politicians, to use the proper language. There are no separatists. These are Russian military which are attacking a sovereign, independent country which is merely fighting for the right to exist.
Absolutely. And what do you think that President Putin wants to achieve here?
Well, it is clear he doesn't want Ukraine to exist as is. He is either going to destroy our country physically, or he is going to destroy us politically by putting pressure now on the people, keeping the people in fear, and making sure that the politicians like myself come into parliament and vote for ridiculous decisions, saying that Ukraine will never be part of NATO, saying that Ukraine admits that Crimea is Russian, and whatever other complete madness that he has in his mind in order to rebuild his Russian empire. And this is the crazy world that we live in today. Just this morning, I've been up since 5:30 a.m. Kyiv time. And at 7 a.m., I was already in the Rada, prepared to vote for the martial law. And we voted the martial law in. Ukraine is in a state of war, a war declared by Russia on Ukraine, and which started back in 2014 with Russian aggression.
And what are your fears this morning for the people of this country?
The fears are clear. Airports are being bombed and shelled, as these are...
Well, I'm sorry, we seem to have lost Lesia Vasilenko there, but I mean, she was absolutely clear, and it is a valid point that we're talking about separatists. We were just doing so before she came on. And I mean, there are separatists there, and they've been there for 8 years or so, but now there are Russian troops on Ukrainian soil, and she makes the point that they are now clearly at war with Russia.
Yes, and there's been a statement from the president describing what he says has been happening to his country, and actually the MP just made that point there as well, that this attack, this operation began at 5 o'clock local time. The president said that there had been intensive shelling against units in the east, which is close to where that occupied territory is, and also missile strikes on airfields in Borispil, which is the airport area close to Kyiv, and also other areas including Kramatorsk, which is in the east of the country, and against military infrastructure. We don't yet have a full breakdown of what exactly has been hit, and he's very adamant that the Ukrainian armed forces are responding. But it gives you just a sense of what actually happened this morning, what we all woke up to when we heard these explosions that we could hear from the centre of Kyiv in terms of the attack actually beginning. But it seems that it did all start to unfold at 5 o'clock this morning.
And clearly the MP there and many others in Ukraine will be fearing the worst case scenario.
They will, and it's almost been like a narrative that's just what the West had said would happen all along, and it's been unfolding gradually, and then suddenly building up this creation of a crisis in the East. This is a country that's been in conflict for 8 years. Let's not forget that. Russia invaded Ukraine already back in 2014 when it annexed Crimea, and as that MP was saying, backed what we describe as the separatists in the east of the country.
I think we can see some pictures actually from Crimea, I'm being told.
Well, and Crimea as well is a key staging post now in this operation. We've known over the last few weeks that Russia has built up its troop presence on that peninsula, as well as some 150,000 troops around this country. It's more than 60% of Russia's entire combat power. And in terms of the air power, it's more than half of the air power it's got at its disposal for this operation. We've seen those satellite images with field hospitals, blood supplies, all the kind of infrastructure and logistics chain that you would also need to launch an operation. And yes, like I was saying, the narrative that's been built up, information used as a weapon as much as missiles and bombs in this conflict. You've had the Russians claiming that Ukraine's armed forces pose a threat to civilians, ethnic Russians in Donetsk and Luhansk regions. You had them taken out of those regions under this supposed threat. No independently verifiable evidence of any threat. Ukraine's government says it's not true, and yet that is the justification that President Putin is giving to his people as he launches this operation to try to protect people, whereas actually he's creating a huge crisis in what had been a peaceful country that doesn't pose a threat. OK, let's bring in James Cleverly, who is in Westminster, and James Cleverly, I think, Foreign Office Minister. Yes, we can talk to you. So your reaction, first of all, to what is unfolding here where we are this morning?
Well, Mark, sadly, what we're seeing is the situation in Ukraine playing out, unfortunately, as we feared it might and as we predicted it would. Vladimir Putin has used disinformation, he's used lies, he's used false flag activities to justify the unjustifiable, which is an invasion of Ukraine. In response to this, the UK will, in close alignment with our international partners, bring forward an unprecedented level of sanctions to punish this aggression and to hopefully persuade the people around Vladimir Putin that this is completely the wrong thing to do and that he should reverse this attack. The Prime Minister spoke with the Ukrainian President, Foreign Secretary spoken with her opposite number, I've spoken with the Ambassador. We continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainian people. But
President Putin will almost certainly have factored in the new round of sanctions that is going to come, as you say, and he doesn't seem to mind. He seems to think he's just going to get on with what he wants to do, and he doesn't seem to care about sanctions.
Well, we've already seen the ruble collapse on the international markets. That will have a meaningful impact on Russia. The people, the institutions that prop him up, even if Vladimir Putin doesn't care, the people around him will feel this, and they absolutely will care. The decision to invade Ukraine, as I say, completely unprovoked, completely unjustified, and it will be met with an unprecedented response from the international community.
You've been providing, and the West and the United States has been providing lots of intelligence about what his forces are doing on the border and what his plans are. That sort of intelligence has been announced openly by Joe Biden. What is the intelligence at the moment about what President Putin is out to achieve here?
Well, sadly, President Putin has been really clear in what he's trying to achieve. He is trying to recreate a Russian empire in his mind, claim back places which he defines as Russia. But the international community recognizes that these are individual sovereign states. Ukraine is not part of Russia. And the fantasy that Vladimir Putin is trying to play out, recreating some kind of Tsarist, expansionist Russia, absolutely has to be stopped. And we will continue working. We've been providing financial and military support to Ukraine for a number of years. Just yesterday, the Foreign Secretary announced an economic support package. There will, of course, be more support, and we will be bringing forward, as I say, in close concert with our international friends and allies, an unprecedented sanctions response, coordinated sanctions response to punish this appalling decision.
But is your understanding or intelligence that he wants to remove the government here and control the whole of Ukraine?
Well, the excuses that he's been giving, the justifications that he's giving, cannot be believed. We do, of course, fear that he might try and do something as reckless as that. We will, of course, continue to push back. And what I would say is that the military leaders around Vladimir Putin, they must know that this is a catastrophically bad judgment call by Vladimir Putin. Ukraine is a huge country physically. I have no doubt the Ukrainian people will be ferocious in defense of their homelands. And the military leaders must know that this will come at a huge cost, not just to Ukrainians, but to Russians. And they are in a position, even if Vladimir Putin won't, they are in a position to stop this, and we call upon them to do so.
And can anything else be done to stop him now? This is well underway. And is the position still very clear that NATO troops will not be fighting in Ukraine?
Well, Ukraine is not a NATO country. We will, of course, give support to the Ukrainians in their own self-defense. NATO, the relationship of NATO member states is different to that, to the one we have with Ukraine. But we will, of course, support the Ukrainians in defending themselves. The Prime Minister is chairing a meeting of COBRA, I think almost it's imminently, where decisions about how that support will manifest itself. And he will also be speaking to other world leaders, as will the Foreign Secretary, as will I, in terms of our coordinated support to Ukraine and our coordinated punitive sanctions towards Russia.
Right, and just finally, NATO states, can you guarantee that NATO states, if threatened, once he does what he wants to do with Ukraine, will be defended?
Oh, be under absolutely no doubt. The solidarity of NATO is unwavering. And that's why the UK and indeed other NATO member states have been moving troops to our Eastern NATO allies. So absolutely NATO will stand shoulder to shoulder with its members, but we will also continue to support the legitimate government of Ukraine, to support the people of Ukraine in their self-defense against this unprovoked aggression from Vladimir Putin.
Okay, James Cleverly, thank you for being with us this morning. Let's go down to the southeastern Ukraine now, Mariupol, the port city there. Alex Rossi joins me now. And Alex, do you have any idea from what you're seeing, what you're hearing down there, what is going on?
It is a very confusing picture here, Mark. World leaders have described this as a dark day for Ukraine. It's certainly very gloomy down here in Mariupol. There's an incessant rain coming in now, and it's hard to work out what exactly is going on. Now, there have been reports that there has been a Russian amphibious landing. We've seen no evidence of that at all. It could be further up the coast. We're hearing every so often the sound of explosions. It's very hard, again, to tell whether that's incoming fire or outgoing fire. It's hard to tell whether or not it's airstrikes. I think it's probably the sound of artillery, but a very, very odd place to be at the moment. And you look around here, there are still cars on the road. In this direction, about 20 kilometers away, there are the front lines. Now, we are seeing most of the traffic coming away. There's villages along that area coming away into the city of Mariupol, which is up this road. There are a few cars going this way, but not many at all. We've also seen as well this morning quite a few ambulances coming back from the front towards the city. Now, just to give you an idea where we are, this is the steelworks behind me. Just over my right shoulder on this side, you can perhaps just make out the Sea of Azov. Now, this is a port city. It's an industrial center. It's strategically extremely important. Now, significantly, it is also within the Donbass, albeit under Ukrainian control. Now, according to the constitution of the Russian-backed separatists, they claim this is their territory. So this would be a place that you'd expect to be taken quite quickly in this Russian invasion of Ukraine. But people here, they're waiting. They're extremely nervous. It's really odd, actually. I've been here for 10 days now, and certainly for the first 7 or 8 of those days, most people were really quite disbelieving of the intelligence being put out there into the public by Western intelligence agencies. They just didn't think this happened. Of course, they recognized this mass buildup of Russian troops and armor on their borders, but things changed significantly after that really quite odd, described by soldiers who listened to it, crazy speech by Vladimir Putin a few days ago. And I think people did start to believe that this would happen. And of course, they're waiting very nervously to see what happens. I've seen a few people out in town, spoken to a few people. They're pretty scared. Other people we've seen scuttling back into their homes with bags of shopping, stocking up really in the event that they may have to hunker down for the next few days, weeks. How long this will go on, of course, nobody knows.
Alex, I should just say, stay with me a second, I should just say that the Ukrainians are reporting that 8 people have been killed and 9 wounded in the attacks on this country so far. And Alex, you were just hinting there at how important a strategic area that is, Mariupol. He also, of course, has Crimea already. Just explain in more detail why that is so important to him down there.
Well, it's an industrial centre. It's also a port city, so from that point of view, it's nestled on the Sea of Azov. It would be an important place to take. It's also within the Donetsk Oblast, under, as I was saying, Ukrainian control at the moment. So that would make it a significant strategic target for the Russians. But also from the eastern part of the country, so from Western Russia coming in, you would also need to take this place to create a land bridge to Crimea, which, of course, Vladimir Putin took control of and annexed in 2014. So from that point of view, it is extremely significant. Now, there are, various theories as to how Vladimir Putin will launch this attack. It's early days. We don't yet really know what he is planning to do. It would appear that there is an invasion taking place across the country. Now, you could see a massive column of armor pushing up from the Crimea. That would cut Ukraine pretty much in half. Remember that most of the Ukrainian military is pivoted towards the Eastern Front, and it would effectively decapitate Kyiv. Remember that in this conflict, Kyiv is the centre of gravity. That is what you'd have to take out if you were going to take control of the whole country. So dark and difficult days for Ukraine. People really waiting, as I was saying, extremely nervously here. Now, I was up in a village called Berdyansk. It's about 18 kilometres from where we are standing here in this direction. Now, that place was attacked continuously from 2014 onwards. There were significant attacks in 2016. There are a few people living there at the moment, but most people have left. And we've also saw quite a few Ukrainian soldiers in the buildings there as well. Now, it's areas like that along the coastline that would perhaps be places that you could see an amphibious assault by Russian Marines, as well as the land forces coming in from the south of Crimea. But again, we wait and see what's happening. We're hearing more sirens, the sound of more ambulances in the distance as well. The odd sound of an explosion long way away, but these are really, really troubling and nervous times.
OK, Alex Rossi in Mariupol. Take care down there. It's 7:30 in London, which is the scheduled starting time for the Cobra meeting that Boris Johnson has called. He will then, I'm told, speak in the House of Commons, make a statement in the House of Commons about what has been unfolding, the awful events that are unfolding here in Ukraine. We're also expecting a news conference from Ursula von der Leyen at the EU. We will bring you that as soon as that happens. But as you can see there, bottom of your screen, Cobra meeting underway. Though I've got to say, it is pretty difficult to see what they can do about this. They imposed sanctions. That did not deter President Putin from what he's done, and the threat of even more swingeing sanctions have not deterred him from what he is doing today, which appears to be a major assault on this country. Ursula von der Leyen is speaking in Brussels.
Men and children are dying of fear for their lives. We condemn this barbaric attack and the cynical arguments to justify it. It is President Putin who is bringing war back to Europe. And in these dark hours, the European Union and its people stand by Ukraine and its people. We are facing an unprecedented act of aggression by the Russian leadership against a sovereign, independent country. Russia's target is not only Donbass. The target is not only Ukraine. The target is the stability in Europe and the whole of the international peace order. And we will hold President Putin accountable for that. Later today, we will present a package of massive and targeted sanctions to European leaders for approval. With this package, we will target strategic sectors of the Russian economy by blocking their access to technologies and markets that are key for Russia. We will weaken Russia's economic base and its capacity to modernize. And in addition, we will freeze Russian assets in the European Union and stop the access of Russian banks to European financial markets. Like with the first package of sanctions, we are closely aligned with our partners and allies, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, but also, for example, Japan and Australia. These sanctions are designed to take a heavy toll on the Kremlin's interests and their ability to finance war. And we know that millions of Russians do not want war. President Putin is trying to turn the clock back to the times of the Russian Empire. But in doing so, he is putting at risk the future of the Russian people. I call on Russia to immediately stop the violence and to withdraw its troops from Ukraine's territory. We will not let President Putin tear down the security architecture that has given Europe peace and stability over many decades. We will not allow President Putin to replace the rule of law by the rule of force and ruthlessness. He should not underestimate the resolve and strength of our democracies. And history has proven that societies and alliances built on trust and freedom are resilient and successful. And that's exactly what the autocrats fear. The European Union stands with Ukraine and its people. We will continue to support them. Ukraine will prevail. Thank you.
These are among the darkest hours for Europe since the end of World War II. A major nuclear power has attacked a neighbor country and is threatening reprisals of any other states that may come to its rescue. This is not only the greatest violation of international law, it's a violation of the basic principles of human coexistence. It's costing many lives with unknown consequences ahead of us. The European Union will respond in the strongest possible terms. President of the European Council, President Michel, has called for a meeting of the European Council this evening, and they will agree and provide political guidance to adopt the stronger package, the harshest package of sanctions we have ever implemented. As High Representative for the Foreign Affairs and Security Policy of the European Union, I will be in touch with our partners around the world to ensure the international community will be fully grasping the gravity of the moment and to call strongly and united on Russia to cease immediately this behavior, intolerable behavior, and Russian leadership will face unprecedented isolation. This is not a question of blocks. This is not a question of diplomatic power games. It's a matter of life and death. It's about the future of our global community. And we will stand united with our transatlantic partners and with all European nations in defending this position. We stand united in saying that no violence and destruction as means to obtain political gains. We, the European Union, remain the stronger group of nations in the world, and this should not be underestimated. More immediately, we will be designing urgent assistance to Ukraine in this dire situation. We will also be active in supporting evacuation operations, including of our own staff in zones affected by this Russian attack. The European Union, together with transatlantic and like-minded partners, have made unprecedented efforts to achieve a diplomatic solution to the security crisis caused by Russia. But Russia has not reciprocated these efforts and instead has opted unilaterally for a grave and premeditated escalation conducting to war. President Putin needs to stop this senseless aggression. And today our thoughts are with the people of Ukraine. We will stand with them.
So there we are. That is the news conference there from the EU. Ursula von der Leyen saying that this was an unprecedented act of aggression, targeting not only Donbass, not only Ukraine, but the peace and security of Europe. She said this unprecedented act would be met by unprecedented sanctions. We will freeze Russian assets. We will implement sanctions so tough that it will weaken severely the Russian economy and would take its toll on Kremlin interests. We will not let Putin tear down the security infrastructure of Europe, she said. The EU stands with Ukraine and its people. And then Josep Borrell, EU representative for Foreign Affairs, saying that Putin must stop this senseless aggression, and also spoke of unprecedented sanctions being imposed. Here in Kyiv, we've just heard fighter jets roaring over the city. Not clear who they belong to, but it is clear a very serious conflict is unfolding here. Chief Correspondent Stuart Ramsey is also in Kyiv. And Stuart, just bring us up to date with what we know and what we don't know and what is not clear, because there's a lot not clear this morning about what is happening. One thing is clear, there is a very serious conflict happening here.
There appears to be, Mark, and I'm just getting this now. We understand that 4 regions are reporting that the border has been breached, and we believe that is Russian forces have crossed in 4 different regions. We understand from the border security people that they were attacked with artillery, which you would expect to see to, if you like, quieten the situation, and then they were crossing the border. You heard that jet, same as me, pretty loud. A fighter jet for certain. Don't know whose side it was, but it appears that the Russians are invading and that they are coming towards Kyiv and to other cities within the country. We're not sure exactly where their aims are. We have been told for days now that Kyiv is the #1 target. We don't know if that is the case at all, but it appears that it is very much underway. You and I were both woken, of course, with explosions around Kyiv, and colleagues around the country were hearing those explosions in the very early hours of the morning. It has been calm for a while now, but we're still getting reports, and you get that sense that it's building. But we still haven't seen much apart from that activity in the early hours of the morning. Explosions here, jets in the air, then helicopters in the air as well. But it has calmed down since. Where we're going, we just don't know. The Western governments, particularly the United States and Great Britain, have been warning that this was about to happen. And today it appears that it has happened. An invasion is underway, but how it's going to unfold, what effect this is going to have on Ukraine as a country and on the people, we don't know. We do know this, though. People are very, very scared. We know that the motorways leading out of Kyiv towards the west are chock-a-block right now. People are very, very scared. People are probably, the early part of the day, interestingly, people were still coming to work and commuting as normal. That's calmed down a lot now. But many will be, they've been told by their president to stay at home, and I think that's what many people will be doing, waiting to see what happens. Are we going to see Russian soldiers on the streets of this capital in the next few hours? Quite possibly. We just don't know. And that is where we are. That is where Ukraine is, the Western world is, trying to second-guess President Putin and trying to work out how big this invasion is going to be. But it certainly seems that it's really underway now.
Yeah, Stuart, we do have pictures of other parts of Kyiv showing pretty severe gridlock and people clearly trying to get out of this capital city of a country that is now at war. And these are pictures that, well, we haven't seen. I mean, the last few days, as I say, have been extraordinarily calm in this capital city. Things have just been progressing normally, though with, of course, the tension that they've been living with for years, much heightened by all those troops. But there we are. That is one of the main streets in Kyiv, and it is gridlock. Fear is taking hold here as the Russian attack gets underway. Joining me now is Fabrice Potier, a former head of policy planning at NATO. And Fabrice, first of all, your reaction to what you are seeing.
Well, it's a very worrying picture. I don't know if people are fleeing Kiev or if it's the usual morning traffic jam, because Kiev is also known for that. But the reality is that indeed you feel that Ukraine and the Ukrainian people have been left a bit in between and a bit left abandoned by the West, despite all the talks, despite the sanctions, despite the unity of the West. The reality is that you don't have any Western soldiers on the ground to be helping their Ukrainian partners. And basically the Ukrainian armed force, as good as they are and have been trained and equipped for the past 8 years, mean little in front of the military machine that is Russia right now. So it is a pretty sad spectacle to look at.
And what more can NATO be doing? I mean, President Putin has invaded an independent country, a democracy that is waiting and hoping at some stage for NATO membership. But what more can NATO do about this?
Unfortunately, there is not much if you carry on the same basis as we have been operating for the past 8 years, which is, we need to protect ourselves, us being NATO members, and I think this is entirely justifiable. And at the same time, we need to maintain some form of dialogue and diplomatic track with the Russians. Whilst these two things are, I think, pretty sensible, they are clearly not making the difference. And the same with the sanctions that President von der Leyen just announced. It's indeed pretty impressive that the EU got its act together so quickly, and I'm sure those sanctions are pretty powerful, but it's not going to deter Putin, because Putin is on a mission, which is to restore that old kind of Soviet empire where Ukraine is, in his twisted vision, at the core of it. And the only way to stop him is to respond with force, because he's in the logic of force. The problem is we're not willing to do that. We are not willing to send US, French, German, British soldiers on Ukrainian soil to fight for that. And this he knows very well, and this is why he can go all the way to Kiev if he wants to.
And if he does go all the way to Kiev, he will control this country. He says he doesn't want occupation, but one assumes his troops would be in this country, and therefore his troops would be on a border opposite NATO forces in many NATO countries, and that is a pretty dangerous situation.
Well, I think this is the defeat of our own strategy and of our grand talk of sanctions and collective defense, is that we could well end up now with Russia literally at our door, taking on a very significant country. But where you're right is, I think Putin knows very well he cannot occupy a country of more than 40 million people whose majority do not want to be Russians or do not want to be part of Russia. They want to be Ukrainians. And that occupation will be done at a huge cost for Russia and Russian armed forces. So I don't think this is his strategy. His strategy is to have enough bargaining power to impose his terms on whoever is going to lead Ukraine, so that Ukraine is not this democratic, free, open societies, which basically is the main threat for him. So, and instead, Ukraine will be a docile, in a way, aligned country with Putin's Russia.
Fabrice, thank you very much. And you are looking at pictures of a capital city of a country that is under attack by Vladimir Putin's military. The attack began in the early hours of the morning, and this capital city has yet to be attacked from the air, but there is gridlock and there is heavy traffic, and people are trying to flee this capital city, clearly fearing that Russian troops will at some stage make their way into the capital here. It's not clear the scale of the attack that is underway, but we do know it is serious and it is a large attack. And there the images that you can see in this capital. Fear is taking hold of people. They're trying to get out, but at the moment they can't because it is gridlock, as you can see. And that is the situation in this capital where I am. Let's find out the situation in the second biggest city, Kyiv, which is way over to the east, much closer to the, well, it's about 20 miles, 30 miles or so, John, isn't it, from the Russian border. What's happening where you are?
Yeah, hi, Mark. It's very close, 20 miles to the border from the center of Kharkiv, city of about 1.5 million people, the second largest in this country. And there are developments here. The National Police of Ukraine are reporting a deep breakthrough of Russian troops in the Chernihiv and Kharkiv regions. Chernihiv is a city to the east of us. It is right on the border. It is both a city, a major Ukrainian city, and a region. The border service is saying that the Russians have brought in military equipment, armored vehicles, that they have proceeded through multiple checkpoints on the border. The border service is saying that a number of servicemen have been injured. So there are casualties, they say, but they are taking all measures to stop the enemy. But if you look at the border service, they are lightly armed. They will have light weapons, guard dogs, lightly armed vehicles. They would not be able to put up much of a fight against the Russian military. But this is an important development, and it gives us an idea of what the Russians are thinking. Although President Putin has been quoted by the Interfax news agency this morning saying that he has no plans to occupy Ukrainian territory. Make of that what you will. I don't think anybody will put much store in what he has to say anymore. We have heard a couple of artillery thuds in the last 10 minutes, feeling that Russian forces are coming close. We haven't seen or heard much, I have to say. I'm just going to pull out of the way. The center of the city, very quiet now. What we have seen is groups of men in uniforms carrying military packs, military bags, grouping together in this square and then being taken away in vehicles. The Ukrainians are preparing. They will defend. They show every evidence of being willing and able to defend. But I think this war, this special military operation, in Putin's words, is coming much closer now to this city.
Yeah, John, thank you very much. So he has information there that border crossings are being breached by Russian troops. Stuart Ramsey a few moments ago was talking about 4 different areas where there are reports that Russian troops are breaching the border of a sovereign independent country. So President Putin can say that he doesn't want to occupy Ukraine, but he is. He is occupying Ukraine, and his troops are moving in, and he is waging war on a democratic country in Europe. Let's speak to the Senior Fellow on the Transatlantic Defence and Security Programme at the Centre for European Analysis. Mark Voyager joins me now. First of all, what do you make of what's happening?
Well, what's happening is the darkest hour in European history for the last 77 years. But if anybody was surprised, unfortunately, Putin and the Kremlin had made their intentions quite clear over the course of the past several weeks, several months, and indeed, in a strategic sense, for many years, they have been trying to effectively destroy the sovereignty of Ukraine, the largest country in Europe, and ultimately what Putin stated just 2 days ago, to dismantle the statehood of Ukraine in any sense. What Putin really wants is a disarmed Ukraine that doesn't turn to the West, that follows Moscow's orders, effectively a de facto sort of a puppet republic of the Russian Federation.
So effectively kind of absorbing Ukraine into Russia under his control.
It'll be framed in a quasi-legalistic way. He will get the impression that this is dependent on all the entire foreign and security policy will be important if put away. This goal in Belarus, he has effectively achieved it, and apparently now that he has seen that diplomacy, that is not yield results, he's now stepped up and moved to the military stage of the operation. All part of the plan.
Yeah, Mark, we're having a problem with the line. Let's hope it improves. Why do you think President Putin has chosen now? Is it because of the state of the Western alliance? He's been festering about this for years. Why now?
There are multiple factors: strategic, international, regional. NATO has given strong signals to Ukraine since Ukraine has been seeking, of course, NATO and EU membership. By the way, if Ukraine succeeds in joining the Western alliance, this will be a death blow to Putin's imperial project across Eurasia. Without Ukraine, Russia has never been an empire. In a tactical sense, yes, this was his last window of opportunity. Let's put it that way. The usually tactical advances by Russia have taken place in the dry season in the summer, August, September, and then in the winter, January, February. So this is the so-called frozen land period. So this is the last kind of days and weeks where heavy Russian armor can actually move across the terrain there. And of course, Putin views the West as being divided, weak. Apparently, he has no respect for the Western politicians. You saw how he treated Macron and many others. And he sees this as the best moment of opportunity to actually implement his plan.
And if he does what we are thinking he may do, that will be redrawing the security map of Europe. It will be bringing Russian troops into much closer proximity with NATO troops. And how dangerous do you think that is?
Well, this will be the end of the global security order as we know it, and I say this extremely responsibly without any exaggerations. I mean, effectively, Putin has killed the Helsinki Accords and has brought war into the heart of Europe. He won't stop there. The way he framed this aggression is that he's actually on a liberating conquest, on a campaign of liberation. He intends to take down the Ukrainian government, which he calls a Nazi or neo-Nazi regime. Similar claims he can then throw against any nation in the Baltics. They actually have been making such claims at the UN level and elsewhere. And therefore, the Russian information warfare machine has sufficient tools to actually project the image of Russia defending itself against supposedly an aggressive West and actually expanding its perceived sphere of influence in very much like Stalinist style or Catherine the Great from the 18th century. I mean, Putin doesn't live in the 21st century. His perception, his mindset is really set in Stalinist times, even in the 19th century great spheres of influence. He will not accept the international order in Europe as it exists anymore. And this is a grave danger to the European continent and to the West as a whole.
Okay, Mark Voyager, thank you very much indeed. Very worrying what you're saying, and thank you for being with us this morning. And here in Kyiv, well, you can see the city skyline there. We are hearing the bells of the cathedral. I've got to say, people in some parts of Kyiv are just sort of milling around, wondering what on earth is going to happen in this city of 4 million people. But there are also extraordinary traffic jams and gridlock and people trying to leave now because the reality is, well, it's coming home pretty fast. There you can see what is going on. Huge queues at petrol stations, people trying to get out of this city, presumably heading west towards Poland, which is a way out, as they fear the worst, a full assault on this free, democratic country of Ukraine by the forces of Vladimir Putin, who has begun a military operation in the early hours of this morning against Ukraine.